needs a TV if you've got a fish tank? The way that an aquarium works is your fish produce waste, basically in the form of ammonia. Then you need to grow good bacteria within your filter, which in this case there's a internal there and there's a hang-on here. Now the good bacteria that grows in the filter needs to be able to break the ammonia into nitrite. Then you need other good bacteria to grow the nitrite into nitrate. Now the ammonia and nitrate are an indication of your filter's capacity, and your nitrate is an indication into how often you're doing water changes. So what I'm going to do now is do a series of tests and work out where we're at as far as that's concerned. But that isn't all that's involved. There's also proteins, amino acids, and other stuff that we actually can't test for. So what we do need to have is very good, stable bacteria in order to break all this stuff down. And this tank has quite a lot of fish in it. So therefore it's going to need a fair bit of good bacteria. And if these filters are not able to grow enough good bacteria, then Mother Nature says no fish for you. Mother Nature's going to knock some fish off. And what tends to happen is you'll lose a fish here and lose a fish there, and often for what appears to you to be no apparent reason. But the reason is very simple, that there is just not enough bacteria for the waste that's being produced. Now this fella here is a fantail, a type of Aranda goldfish. And these fish are laterally compressed. That's the way they're bred. And that's a bit of a problem at times because it means that there's not a natural amount of room for their swim bladder. So these fish experiencing swim bladder issues is very, very common. And in general, these fish tend to be full of recessive genes. So they're really not that tough because they're mutations bred into dominance. So they sort of look cool. They look very novel. But they're all fashion, no function. They're very far removed from the original fish from the wild that looks nothing like this. It's just like a bronze comet. So we've just given this water a bit of a test, and the GH is a little bit on the high side. So when we do the water change, which we might do right now, we do not need to add any of this. The KH was good, and then a bit of Easy Life is a good thing for increasing immune system, and we got to make sure we use Water Ager. This is good if we get parasites in the water, which I don't see any evidence of at this stage. So that's all pretty much under control. Now there is basically no ammonia in the water. There is a little bit of nitrite in the water, which once again would be because they're not real big filters, and there's quite a lot of fish bouncing around in this tank. So the fish are producing too much waste for these filters. So it's really important the filters are cleaned in water from the fish tank, not water from the tap. And you need to grow enough bacteria for these fish, which in this case has not been the case. So what we're going to do is nip down to the shop and grab a canister filter. And it's going to cost a couple of $100, but it's going to most likely solve the problem because within a few weeks, we're going to get really good bacteria growing in the canister, and then that's going to make sure the fish are nice and healthy and happy. The other thing that we want to do is make sure the surface agitation is good. Now, the door's open, which is a good thing. Getting air into the room is very good. What you don't want is like a closed up house with a gas heater, because that can lower the dissolved oxygen level of the tank, which in this case I'm not worried about. And the surface agitation in this tank is quite good. So we've got agitation there. I'm very happy to see that. We've got the filter putting a bit of water in, and we've got an air stone. So I'd be suggesting the oxygen level is quite acceptable in this tank. So adding the extra filter is really going to be the key, particularly for how many fish are in this tank. If we did not have so many fish, then we wouldn't have such a problem. But there's a lot of fish in this tank and they're going to grow. So having a bigger filter is going to be our friend. So Fish keeping is basically 50% about water quality and 50% about nutrients. So when it comes to quality of food, Danichi is pretty much the best. And I do like to mix that with a little bit of probiotics from New Life Spectrum, because the probiotics is very, very clean. What the probiotics food does is the probiotic bacteria in the food is very good for the fish's digestion. But when the fish poo, the bacteria in the poo eats the poo. So it does help to keep the tank nice and clean. So a combination of the probiotics food and the Danichi is about as good as you can get. Now, when you're doing a water change, it's really important to use a gravel cleaner, because what the gravel cleaner does is allow you to remove the waste out of the water while you're doing the actual water change. And the amount of crap you get out of the gravel is unbelievable a lot of the time. So I just managed to suck up this fishy. He's not having a good time. It's something I've heard of other people doing, but being in the industry for nearly 30 years, I've actually never sucked a fish up with a gravel cleaner.
Well, after 30 years, that's pretty good.
And there you go. I've heard of people sucking fish up with gravel cleaners, and I thought that was a bit special to be able to do that. But apparently it is possible to do it, because I've just done it. He wasn't in a good way anyway, but now he is in an even worse way thanks to me and the gravel cleaner. So there you go. Now, when doing a water change, I normally aim for around a quarter of the water, but never do over a half. Half is the most I ever want to do at any one time. And use the gravel cleaner and try not to suck up your fish. Now, one thing really worth having if you have a fish tank is a 20-litre bucket, particularly if you're nice and strong, because it gets the water changes and so forth done so much faster than trying to muck around with a little bucket. And it's really important that you have a bucket that's just for your fish tank. You don't want to have a bucket that you're washing the car or cleaning the floors with, because the residual of any cleaning products can definitely be poisonous to your fish. Now, it's important to check your GH every now and then. It's a great thing for improving the fish's immune system. And there's two main things that will make your GH level be too high. So in this tank, it's a tad high. So GH supplements are going to make your GH high. The other thing is high doses of water agent tends to make your GH a little bit high as well. So if you want to lower it, just do a water change and add a nominal amount of your water agent, and don't add any of your conditioning salts to get your GH down. Add more of that if you want your GH up. Don't add that for GH. Use that for detoxing or chlorine. Now, this stuff here is a great thing to support the immune system of your fish. What Easy Life does is help to drop out of solution what shouldn't be in solution and hold in solution what should be in solution. And it helps to give the water what's called a type positive charge, which means it makes the environment harder for type negative bacteria. So if you get this, give it a good shake and tip some in. It's sort of the more the better with this stuff, and it'll make the water cloudy. Then it will do its job, and then it will clear, crystal clear. Well, if there's anything I've learned today, is anything you judge, you become. Because I've had customers come in telling me they've sucked up their fish before, and I really didn't understand how that was possible. But here I am today, and I've decided that sucking up fish is something you can do, because I've managed to do it. The other thing you could do in this tank if you wanted to, or wanted a bit of a change, is you can put a background on the back of the tank. And the background will just give it a bit of a different look and mean you don't see your cords and stuff. Now, it's important that you prime your filters, which means fill them up with water before you turn them on. Now, this one is a hang-on filter. So to prime it, all you basically do is tip some water in it. And then once it's full of water, it can then suck the water through, and then it will start flowing. But they quite often need a high amount of water in there in order to start flowing over. And at the moment, it's just sucking out air bubbles out of this line, and then the filter starts. So now it's working. So you just need to, any external filters, you need to fill them up with water to get them to work. And in this case, we're not going to clean the filters today, and that's because we're about to put a new filter on, and we want to keep the good bacteria in the old filters and allow about a month for the good bacteria to grow in the new filter. So over time, you'll notice all your ornaments looking real shitty. If you want to fix that, the best thing to do is throw it in the sun and leave it for a day, and then turn it over and leave it for a day, then hit it with a hose, and then normally it will come up pretty much good as new. You can go and clean it under the tap and all that sort of stuff, but it's pretty hard work and it doesn't really work that well. Whereas the sun is a great way of bleaching off the algae, but don't go leaving it out in the sun for like 2 months, otherwise you'll bleach the actual ornament. But just a day or so, and then hit it with the hose, and you'll be surprised how well this stuff will come up. But it's probably a good idea not to do that for the next month or so, considering we're about to put a new filter on it. So in a month's time, once the filter is kicked in, we could then give the ornaments a bit of a sun bleach. Now, if you are getting too much algae in your aquarium, one of the first things you want to do is consider reducing the light. You could even have a blackout period for a month or so. That would tend to really, really kill off the algae, or just massively reducing the amount of light that's running in the tank is a great way of reducing the algae. The other thing you can do every now and then too is change the background. So we're going to put a background on this tank. That'll give the tank a bit of a different look. And then every now and then pull the background off, put a different background on, because change is king with a fish tank. The way a fish tank works is you set it up, you make it look nice. For 1 year you love it, 1 year you like it, and then you've seen it. So changing stuff around is what keeps you interested. Whether you change your background, whether you change your gravel, whether you change your fish, whether you change your decorations, it's change that keeps you interested. So if you notice you can walk past your aquarium without looking at it, then it's time to do something. Change is king. Just don't ever ask me for marriage advice.